Hello and welcome to the Spark of Ages podcast, where we're going to talk to founders, innovators, CEOs, investors, designers, and artists. I'm talking game changers about their big world-shaping ideas and what sparked them. I'm your host, Rajiv Parikh. I'm the CEO and founder of Position Squared, a growth marketing company based in Palo Alto, California. So yes, I'm a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, but I'm also a business news junkie and a history nerd. I'm fascinated by how big world-changing movements go from the spark of an idea to an innovation that reshapes our lives. In every episode, we're going to do a deep dive with our guest about what led them to their own eureka moments and how they're going about executing it, and perhaps most importantly, how do they get other people to believe in them so that their idea could also someday be a spark for the ages. This is the Spark of Ages podcast. In addition to myself, we have our producer, Sandeep, who will occasionally chime in to make sure we don't get too in the weeds with all that jargon.
That's right. That's my job. I'm sticking to it. We're going to make it happen today.
You're the jargon remover.
A jargon removal engineer, please.
The healthcare.gov website was launched 10 years ago on October 1st, 2013. In perhaps what was the worst go-to-market rollout in history.
That was pretty bad. They should have listened to our other podcasts.
I know. Had they just brought in AJ or some of these other amazing folks, it would have been more successful, way more successful. It's been over a decade since the landmark legislation was passed and it began its implementation. Today, we're hoping to explore the impact of those laws on our collective health and understand its impact on a leader who found his spark because of it. Jay Desai serves as CEO, Chief Executive Officer at Bamboo Health. Bamboo Health supports more than 2,500 hospitals, 37 payers, those are insurance payers, 7,800 post-acute facilities, 25,000 pharmacies, and 45 state governments. Bamboo Healthcare's collaboration network brings together both physical and behavioral healthcare connected to more than 1 million providers and touches more than 1 billion lives. Previously, he co-founded PatientPing and served as CEO before Bamboo acquired PatientPing in 2021. As co-founder and CEO of PatientPing, Desai led creation of solutions to empower providers to transform our healthcare system into one that provides high-quality care at a lower cost and connects healthcare providers across the country with real-time notifications to better coordinate care. Jay has spent the past decade as a healthcare policymaker, executive, and investor. Prior to Bamboo Health and PatientPing, Jay worked at the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation, where he helped design and implement value-based care payment models funded by the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. Jay Desai earned a master's in business administration in healthcare management from the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School, and he has a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Michigan and is a Coro Fellow. In addition to all that, Jay has also become an angel investor, making seed investments in healthcare-related startups.
I think he's got a badge for being in the Health System Transformation Task Force.
Do you think it's shaped as a stethoscope?
Yeah.
The cool snake thing?
Oh, yeah, like the medical, the medical badge, yeah. Just always wanted a badge for the job I was doing. All right, let's jump to our interview with Jay Desai.
I'm thrilled to have Jay Desai with us today. He's a brilliant entrepreneur in the healthcare space, an area that I was aspiring to get into years ago and found that I wasn't smart enough to do. So that's why I'm really excited to have Jay with us, because not only has he found a way to get into this incredibly complex and incredibly beneficial space, he's actually built a very successful business in that world. So Jay, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and also I just want to point out that Rajiv is starting out pandering to you. You may not be able to notice, but Rajiv, why don't you lean back a little bit and show off your pander? Yeah. So for those of you listening at home, Rajiv is wearing a Michigan shirt.
The pandering's working.
And the reason is, not only was I really excited about chatting with Jay today, but I've been paying into Michigan. My son just graduated from Michigan Law School.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah, very excited. He loved the school. The law school is incredible. These stone buildings are just, the library's over the top. And we've gotten to know a lot about Michigan, like Zingerman's. Best sandwiches in the world.
Best sandwiches in the world.
Miss Kim, amazing
pickles,
Korean restaurant. Pickles, yes, they're big on pickles. All the little coffee shops there, just love just love going out there and seeing them.
Yeah, those are the fancy grad school spots. Like when you're an undergrad, you don't really go to the $8 sandwich place. More than 350 zone is kind of where we exist.
How much was the pickle?
The pickle probably the cost of like a really good sandwich that we get at like Jimmy John's. But the law school library is insane. Like that's where we would go to get the serious studying done.
Yeah.
Like, when we actually wanted to go study, we'd go to the law school library. It's really, really pretty.
It's an amazing place. Everyone that I know that has gone to Michigan really loves the school. It's, a lot of times you hear folks when they go to a state-sponsored school, you never know what you're going to get. But Michigan just incredible passion around it.
Yeah, it's big enough where you can kind of be whoever you want to be and kind of create the world that you want to create with the friends that you meet. And they do a lot to make it feel small also. Like there's, where you don't feel lost in kind of the crowd. And then there's just like a lot that kind of ties the school together, mostly obviously sports, but even if you're not a sports fan like me, it's still super fun.
Yeah, well, my son was not a Michigan football fan, surprisingly, but he was only because he was going to law school, but he loved the place. So and that's where he met his fiance to be, and just amazing. So let's chat a little bit about, when you did go to Michigan, that was an out-of-state school, right, for you? Didn't you grow up in Illinois?
Yeah.
Now, were you like in, I think I read a little about your background. Was it a heavy Indian community or not really?
Yeah, big Indian community. In Wheaton, Illinois, it is a heavy, most churches per capita in Wheaton, Illinois. So it's a heavy kind of religious,
very devout.
Yeah, devout community. But also a lot of Gujarati immigrants kind of found their way to the northwest suburbs or the west suburbs of Chicago. And
we're three good Jews on this podcast, huh?
That's right.
And then Anand, our producer, also a good Jews.
Oh my God.
Good Jew representation going on here.
Good representation. That's right. Right.
We get to do our virtual Gorbaras later.
Yeah.
For sure, we got
viewers,
this podcast.
That's Indian folk dance
for free.
Everything we get is for free.
Yeah.
Important. What got you into healthcare? Why did you decide healthcare was the place to go?
Guilt, definitely guilt. I think my parents wanted me to be a doctor, and I think I was never really, so I applied to, I think it was sort of destined from the moment I was out of the womb that I was, going to become a doctor. And that was kind of what sort of the gravitational force influencing what it is that my preferences were.
Did your grandfather do as mine did, which is every letter he would write from India, it would say Dr. Rajiv?
Wow.
Did you basically have Dr. J? Dr. J.
That's pretty explicit. I think my family, they were pretty explicit, but they used some other ways of just mind. And so, it was always like we'd be with all my cousins and somebody would be injured and my parents would be like, so what should we do?
What should we do?
Asking an 8-year-old.
Asking you?
Yeah.
So the only tools they gave you for your birthday were like doctor tools.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a real stethoscope for your 5-year-old birthday.
Get a fake X-ray machine. Let's do an X-ray.
Operation was big in our house.
That was it, right?
Yeah. So I wasn't very good at standardized test taking, and I applied to all of the direct medical school entrance programs, and I didn't get into any of them. And it was like 14 of them or something like that. There's just like rejection letter after rejection letter. I don't know if it was like me generally rebelling against wanting to do that, or if I just didn't have, kind of what they were looking for. But I think that experience, particularly seeing my peers get in, one, built a chip on my shoulder, and also it, I think it was sort of one of my early experiences with rejection that created a lot of fire inside of me.
But what's amazing about your background in that is that you basically pursued healthcare related opportunities even right out of undergrad, right?
Yeah, right. Well, so when we were young and we'd go to Chicago, I was in the suburbs, we'd go to the city. There was this one street, LaSalle Street, where the Board of Option Exchange was. And I just was like in awe of the people wearing suits and walking really fast and talking on the phone. And it just was like that pace of the way that people operated. So I think I just saw a lot of chaos. I felt like at home, and Indian families can be really chaotic, and I felt like that was just a more organized, functional, highly productive. It felt like I was so drawn to the pace of business when I was young. So it just kind of I was like, I want to be there doing that.
So was there an influence there too on the business side? Was there some influence? Like you saw people moving quickly, but your father was a pharmacist, right?
Yeah, my father was a pharmacist.
Nobody ran a pharmacy business, right?
Yeah, he had a pharmacy. Was a small pharmacy in South Side of Chicago. It was like a family business, you know, it was like I would say like more of like a small business. And my dad would leave at 9 a.m. from home, and he'd have the mornings with us. He'd be home by 5 p.m. And, you know, it was stressful because there were days where, you know, the business wasn't doing super well, and there were times where it was doing a little bit better. And we felt that in our house. But yeah, no, healthcare was kind of just an influence. But, you know, and so my parents, I think my mom had an opportunity to get into med school, but it was hard for her because of some of the things in her life, my dad too. And so they were just like, we're going to now give you, you know, make it you were going to sort of relive the things that we didn't get to do through you, you know, like the way to mess with a kid. But, like,
we're going to subtly and overtly influence you to go down the path. And
yeah.
Was there this notion of you saw their medical issue and you felt you could just do it better than them? Is that...
Yeah, no. So the combination of like business and the pace of business and me liking that, but then the guilt that I was living with of like not becoming a doctor made it seem like the business of healthcare was kind of where I should go. And out of college, I had a job at an investment bank where I was, you know, working on industrials and transportation and other companies selling like parts. I was like, this is just not enjoyable. Yeah. Like we were working.
This is freaking boring. Yeah.
It's just boring. Moving, yeah.
I'm moving shit around. I'm moving shit from here to here, and we're trying to make a buck off of it. That's kind of boring.
Yeah. But healthcare was like, I still liked thinking about the business part of it. But with healthcare, it was just more complicated, which is when I started seeing the connection between government, regulation, policy, and how that impacts how people get care. I was like, this is super interesting. I saw politicians talking about healthcare policy. I saw, you know, companies thinking about their strategies based on what the healthcare policy was. And then I saw how that was impacting how people delivered care. I was like, that whole spectrum feels very much in the flow of like the discussion, and, you know, there's real influence here.
Oh, that's amazing.
I keep coming across this term when we were doing our research on you, Jay. Like, what is value-based care?
Totally. So right in most instances, up until I would say like 2020, more like 2015, let's say, you go to the doctor and the doctor gets paid. And so you go to the ER gets paid. You go to the hospital gets paid. So that's like a fee for service system. You deliver a service, you get paid a fee, right? Now, what the incentive in that system is to do more services, right? It's just like, if I can get the person hooked on an opioid so that they keep coming back for a prescription, I make more money. If I go to the ER and then
curing is not a part of the equation.
Yeah, keeping you out of the hospital is not really part of the equation. It's not part of the incentive.
Yeah, when you come to see your doctor, oh, let's get a whole bunch of tests done.
Yeah.
Oh, but the physician group actually owns the testing center.
Right.
Let's do more tests.
Yeah, no, and you always have that thing in the back of your head. Like my mom just had a heart, you know, kind of an angiogram that she needed to do. And it's like, while you're doing the angiogram, they're going to stent you if you need a stent. And then, you know, before you do the angiogram, like, you know, they do the CT scan. And it's like, there's just a strong pull towards doing more. And you're like, do they really need this? Like, is this necessary? And a lot of times it causes
like breeds mistrust.
Yeah. It breeds mistrust. It's like the transaction between you and your car mechanic. It's like, you have no knowledge. Right. And they're like, you're going to need to get these 15 things done. You're like, how am I supposed to answer that question? There's this information asymmetry. So that's a fee for service system. And I saw that firsthand because I was working as an investor in healthcare companies. And you just see that, like, if you're the management team of a, you know, let's say a radiation oncology center, which is delivering cancer therapies, the incentive was so strong to just do as much as you can for the patient. Sometimes that's the right thing to do. But sometimes it's despite the patient, but in service of the business. And that to me was like, this is f***ed. Like, this is so messed up. Like, the fee-for-service system is rewarding more care, which a lot of doctors are good people that are trying to do the right thing. And that's within that context, it's still, you know, the right care. But a lot of times it's just not. It bred a lot of nefarious actors. It also is a big reason why we see that U.S. healthcare spend per capita is higher than every other country, but our outcomes are not.
Than everybody else, right? It's something like what? 18% of GDP. When I started my medical device company way back in 2001, it was 12%, and that was shocking because about 30 years before that, it was 8% of GDP.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah, it's insane.
It just keeps getting more and more expensive compared to what we have, right?
And so if you look at like the root cause of that, it's like hospitals and these hospitals like Mass General, Brigham, you know, or like UCLA or Cedars-Sinai. These are organizations that are stood up as the beacons of our community. You know, we have our babies there, but in many instances, they're just committing straight up extortion, just like taking money out of education, taking money out of our defense system and just pouring money into healthcare because they know they can crank up the money by billing more, by just billing more. And it's not because they're acting in any other way other than what's in their interest based on the way that the incentives are set up. So value-based care is about changing that. It's saying like, why don't we actually change the incentives so that we reward people to keep them healthy, to prevent these bad outcomes from happening, to keep them out of the hospital, to keep people safe and managing, it's sort of rewarding managing their own care. And the Affordable Care Act, this is sort of not that publicly spoken about under the Obamacare, but there was a lot of sort of public discourse around the individual mandate. Like we got to, everybody's going to be forced to get insurance. There's a lot of public discourse around the health insurance exchanges. You're going to be able to buy an individual policy through your state fund.
The idea was to get everybody under some level of care.
Yeah.
Therefore, we can drive the cost down.
You will be able to keep your own doctor. This is my best Obama. We're going to do our best to make sure that you get the best healthcare that you possibly can. It's just like those pauses.
pauses in the nasal. Pause in the nasal.
And he loves saying and
like draw. Yeah. So there was a third part of that Affordable Care Act, as we talked about. There was the mandate, the exchanges, which is, again, what got all the headlines. But value-based care was another big part of it, which is like, we're going to change the incentives so that people get better quality care at a lower cost. And when you talk about healthcare, there's usually three big pillars to it. There's cost, there's quality, and there's access. Access is like, get people insurance. Quality is like, we want the highest quality healthcare in this country, which means we got to invest in innovation. We got to build products. We got to build, medical devices and drugs. And there's the cost equation. And usually you get 2 of the 3. It's hard to get all 3 because like you can get higher quality, you can get more people insured, but how do you actually do that at a lower cost then? So, the Affordable Care Act spent a lot of energy trying to figure out like, what's the way to actually build an infrastructure where you get all 3. And the cost part of it was what I was working on. And when I graduated from business school and I saw that like all this thing that I was so frustrated about with the fee-for-service system, the Affordable Care Act was talking about a solution for that. I was like, sign me up. I'm all in on that. So value-based care was something I got to be a part of, actually designing the incentives, putting these programs out there to get doctors to feel like they're rewarded for doing the right thing.
Amazing. So then this was during business school or after business school? I think you worked at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I went there right after business school.
Which is a nonprofit. It wasn't a for-profit.
Yeah, I was the only guy who paid the tuition at business school and then went to a salary that was lower than what I was getting paid before business school. But I was so moved by the mission. And I also thought that like, being part of this is only going to be beneficial for my long-term career. And then I also thought like the people that I was going to be surrounded by, because there were so many people across the country who were working on little pilots in their, kind of respective regions, trying to get, the same exact principle around value-based care done, like in whether it was like a small pilot that was happening in rural Pennsylvania or something that was happening in McAllen, Texas. There was a big article published by Atul Gawande about some experiments that were happening in McAllen, Texas, and how to reduce the total cost of healthcare at a higher quality. It was like a magnet. Everybody came to Washington, D.C. as part of this Affordable Care Act to say like, I want to now scale up this program that I was working on in my kind of local community. Because the Innovation Center had this very specific mandate. They had $10 billion of funding through the ACA. And they basically said to the Innovation Center, if you can find programs that keep quality at least the same and reduce the cost, you don't have to go through Congress to change the rules for how we pay Medicare. You can just get an actuarial certificate that it's reducing costs and do it. Because before, like, if you want to change the way that doctors are paid, you literally have to take it through Congress. And it's very hard.
That's right. Because that's the way Medicare worked. The reimbursement rates were set by Congress.
Exactly. Yeah. And so being able to just make sure it passed an actuarial test and then scale it nationwide was this like incredible moment for health services researchers, for people who were in this, like all saw the same issue around fee-for-service healthcare and how that was the root of the problem and we can change it. And so I was sort of researching this at business school. And even before that, I was like, this is sort of messed up. I heard about small little pilots that were happening across the country. And when that dropped, I was like, this seems very exciting. And so, I went there along with a lot of other people across the country. And it was just this amazing, like there were incredible people there. People who are still my friends to this day, who've gone from the government to go do incredible things in the world. It's one of the best alumni groups that I'm a part of.
It's amazing. So you saw these incredible innovations there.
Yeah.
And then you saw that opportunity and that you hit a certain point and said, okay, Now it's time for me to start a company in that area.
Yeah. So we were making all this progress on shifting the incentives to make, so just to put it really simply, what we did is we made primary care doctors basically like little insurance companies. Let me just simplify this for you. Like, if I'm a primary care doctor, before, all I cared about was when the person came to my clinic, right? They came for their annual wellness visit. They came for some flu shots. They came for some vaccines. Maybe they had a cold that was like unusually difficult. So they came in, and then I don't really deal with them any other time other than when they come back. I don't really think about them. They're sort of out of sight, out of mind. But when you put the money in their bank account, like let's just say that Sandeep, over the course of his, is going to cost something like $3,000 a year in healthcare expenditures, total healthcare expenditures. And you do that based on a cohort study of like everybody who's in, the 40-ish age range and, people who have hit similar demographics.
How dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you dock my age?
Who have insulin.
By the way, $3,000 is cheap.
But yeah, the average actual cost for like a 65-year-old is $10,000. But like for South Asians who basically all have cardiovascular disease and prediabetes, like it's probably higher.
It's probably higher. It's all that Lipitor.
Yeah, a lot of Lipitor. Yeah. So we would tell the insurance company, before you make money every time they kind of crank and ring the cash register from a visit, but instead we're going to give you all the money. And if you can keep the cost below what we think their benchmark should be, you keep the money. Right. And if you spend more than that, you have to write the government a check. Now, all of a sudden, their incentive is saying, I got to keep you out of the hospital. I got to keep you healthy. I got to keep doing enough that, so I can't not spend anything. I can't just skimp on care. I have to keep you out of the hospital and keep you healthy. But not too much, because I want, I have the incentive to keep the cash. So when that happened, primary care doctors were like, wait, I don't have any tools to do this work. Like, I need to get the data on who's the riskiest. I got to prioritize certain patients who are like pre-diabetes, so I want to keep from getting diabetic. I got to, if somebody's got cancer, then I got to make sure I have like much more monitoring, protection, support, so I can figure out what's going on with them. And one of the things that kept coming up was like, I need to know where my patients are. Like, if I'm now responsible for a panel of 1,000 patients, and they're showing up at UCLA and other ones at Cedars and other ones like, skiing in Colorado, and they fall and break their hip and they end up in the ER and, the University of Colorado, like that's my opportunity to like make sure that their meds are reconciled, that the doctor is not screwing something up, and that afterwards I make sure that they adhere to their medication therapy.
So like the problem is the system wasn't well connected together. Like the promise was there if you would go to the same hospital, the same doctor every time. Potentially, the idea is like, right, you had a doctor, that was your doctor. You didn't go to a bevy of specialists. They didn't refer you out to 30 different places, or if they did, they were in the same community.
Yeah,
right?
or
and that's just not the case anymore.
I think people still were getting their second opinion. My uncle told me I should go to this GI doctor, so they'd go there.
Sure.
But those doctors had no incentive to work with each other. Like there was absolutely no incentive for them to collaborate or coordinate, because they actually were making more money if they didn't collaborate. And so what happened was, let's just use UCLA as an example. They made it really, really hard for you to go outside of UCLA, because like all your information was in UCLA, but people still did. Like you'd get, your OB-GYN would be somewhere else, and you'd have a private doctor somewhere else, but there was no incentive for them to coordinate. And I think with the value-based care, there was now an incentive to track when your patient went somewhere else and then follow up after they went. And that happens. Like, I think there's statistics around the number of doctors that we see. So the average American above the age of 65, which is a Medicare eligible person, sees 7 doctors per year.
Wow. 7 different doctors?
7 different doctors across 4 different organizations. So you might see one doctor that's outside of it. And, imagine if you've got cancer, you're sort of at the end of your life, or you've got comorbidities across your kidneys and your, diabetes, like you're going to probably a dozen doctors, in any given year, because you've got multiple conditions that you need to manage. Those doctors aren't on the same systems. The data doesn't flow between the systems. It's a pain. It's a pain to manage. You have to start over every time you go from one place to the next. You have to take your information over on a DVD or a CD. Like it's insane.
Yep. That's the thing. People were sending discs over. Yeah. It was crazy, right? I remember when I had neck or back problems, I'd have to bring my disc.
Yeah.
I'd get a CD and I'd bring it with me.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
You'd have to get them to fax the records from one place next. That still happens.
So it feels like there is maybe a revolution going on in the industry, right, towards more digital technologies. There's like AI reading MRI scans and using the cloud. I mean, is that happening more? Like, what's the ecosystem looking like today?
Or actually, is that what you saw in terms of starting up your company? Is that I see this cloud effect, I see this ability to network, I can connect all these pieces together. I have the notion of electronic health records that was mandated by this. I have this notion of accountable care organizations, and now you have more. Is that what you saw back then?
I wasn't a tech guy coming into this industry. What I saw was that there was these primary care doctors who were starting to take responsibility for the financial outcomes for their patients, and they didn't know where they were, and they couldn't track when they showed up and had a healthcare event. And I was like, that's a problem that needs to get solved. And so I sort of built around that specific problem, and I sort of all the other noise, it wasn't really in my purview.
So your idea was, let me alert everybody.
Yeah.
That was your idea.
Yeah. Let me just alert
which is a powerful thing.
Yeah.
Like, hey, something happened. Let me make sure everyone in my world knows
that something happened. Yeah. I will say though, that kind of, Sandeep, to your point, like at the time, this was 2011, 2012, like there wasn't like all the hype around AI and medical images being sort of scanned by robots, and like all that wasn't really a thing. But there was like an emerging kind of healthcare technology industry that was starting to get a lot more visibility and traction. But I'll tell you, like, there's the hype, and then there's like what's actually happening within hospitals and doctor offices, and there's a huge disconnect. Like if all you're doing is following like the health tech, digital health news, and hearing about like AI and all these machines sort of automating away like physicians and their jobs, that's not what's happening in the ground. Even today, there's a lot of promise, there's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of excitement. But we're still existing in the world where we're faxing medical records and we're, bringing CDs from one place to the next today.
Right. It's not auto translation. It's not auto note taking.
Yeah.
It's all this stuff is still.
It's happening in little pockets and kind of corners.
It's super cool.
Yeah.
So what's needed then to, share the information or use the technology and then still kind of contain it within a value-based system? Like how's that possible going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all of the right things are happening. The incentives are changing. Leadership, like old leadership that was hung on to the fee-for-service way and paper charts, is starting to age out, and it's being replaced by young leadership. So cultures are changing at health systems, at provider practices. They're adopting technology. The pace of technology development is accelerating like crazy. There's a lot more venture capital and, money flowing into funding digital health innovations. The academic research organizations have always been kind of very supportive of some of the changes that are happening, but a transition is happening. It used to be largely focused on new molecules and sort of building new pharmaceuticals and medical devices. That's sort of moving into health services and digital health technologies and things like that, which is really cool to see. So all that's happening. But the pace of innovation on healthcare, it's not like you don't see transformation of this industry happening, at the pace of like workflow productivity tools or like web conferencing,
So it's like a generational shift.
Yeah. And it's for good reason. Like, look, there's this thing called the Baldrige Award, and the Baldrige Award gets awarded to the health system that has the most tightly wound processes, because it's like you go to the hospital, you get checked in, from check-in, you go to the waiting room, you go from the waiting room, you go to the triage, from the initial triage, you go to go to one. And it's like the entity that has the tightest processes around this typically saves the most lives, because like it's a process and a people business.
Right. Because it reduces errors, right? This is kind of the whole statistical process control came out of like Kaizen, right? That was what Baldrige was about, was enabling that. And that's being applied to healthcare. Like, let's make sure we root out any source of error at any particular step.
Which is a wonderful thing, because when you go, you feel like every step along the way, your health is protected. You don't want to, So when you now try to jam digital technology in there, new workflow innovation, people are like, dude, chill.
You're busting my process.
You're busting my process, which is organized around keeping people alive. So I do want to innovate. I do, but it's a little slower. It's just going to be slower, and that's a natural process of innovation in a high stakes industry. And I think that's the right thing. That's the right pace at which we're moving at the pace that I think the industry is ready to move. But a lot of the right things are happening.
Do you feel like it's going to bend the cost curve? I mean, there was a recent article about this, right? Medicare, not just negotiating drugs, but there was an article about how the cost of Medicare per individual has actually flattened over the last few years. It hasn't risen as spectacularly as previously expected. It's hung up around $12,000 a year per patient, and it was supposed to go to something like 18 to 20 by now. If you just looked at things linearly, some of it they're saying, well, is it because of ACA? Was it because people are getting preventative care? Was it for other innovations? Are people starting to live healthier? Or are we just letting people die faster? That's another way of solving healthcare is like not putting them through a hospital, just letting them die faster. What's your thought about that?
I mean, I'd like to think that it is because of all the efforts that have been made over the past 15, 20 years since the ACA and, even before that. But, there's a lot of health services researchers who say the investments in care coordination that we've been making aren't necessarily making our healthcare costs lower, but they are making healthcare quality higher. I think it's really hard to do a large scale empirical study top down to say, have we actually bent the cost curve as a result of all these efforts? But I've been in this industry now for 15 years working on specifically cost curve, bending efforts,
yes,
both as a policy person as well as a, innovator. I have like reams and reams of anecdotes of how this is actually impacting. And there's also like regional studies around how this is impacting cost and quality. I would like to believe that, the sheer volume, we have almost 15 to 20 million people in these value-based care programs now compared to zero or some million, 15 years ago.
Are you happy about that level, 15 to 20 million
amazing.
Versus 300 million? No?
Well, that's fine. So I should say 15 million of the Medicare fee-for-service population.
Of the Medicare, sorry.
That's a really good number. I don't know what it's, so I should have qualified that. There's Medicare Advantage, which is essentially a value-based care program. A lot of scrutiny around that, but that's essentially a value-based care program. And then on Medicaid, there's a lot more people moving into value-based care. And then on the commercial side,
right,
it's probably a similar percentage. So overall, I think we're, of the 300 million, I wouldn't be surprised if the overall number is close to, 100 million. It probably mimics the percentages that we're at Medicare.
That's a terrific number.
It's a terrific number. And, and the way that it actually manifests practically for a person is like, I remember I was at Montefiore in the ER in the Bronx looking at their value-based care initiatives. They had an iPad with like a list of names of people that were in a value-based care program. And basically, if somebody gets discharged after a surgery or something like that, and they were on the list, they get the name of a care coordinator, of a nurse. It'd be somebody who they can reach out to sort of coordinate their care. She'll reach out to them. She or he will reach out to them depending on what's required, to make sure that they're staying on their plan. If you're not, you just go off and you're left to fend for yourself. You got to get the help that you need.
Right.
That's a very concrete description of what the change is. Now, if you got somebody who's like you out on speed dial after you've had a surgery, then you're probably going to not come back to the hospital for a $10,000 visit because you can sort of deal with it while you're at home. But that's the change that's happening for 100 million people potentially.
So they're actually helping them with making sure they stay on the meds, because a lot of people, compliance, no matter how beneficial it is, compliance is really poor for taking your medications, doing the right practices, just checking in on them. Like you have a whole bunch of cases like this, I know, in your company.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to kind of zoom out a little bit, and so before we had the blue wave in 2010, the term like pre-existing condition meant something very different than it does today, right? Like, can you kind of talk about how government regulation, the ACA, Obamacare, paved the road for innovation in healthcare, and overall just like the role government has to play in innovation?
You mean just like getting more people in the risk pool? Now we have unlocked something around innovation. I don't know. I haven't actually thought about that yet.
I'd even sort of relate it to, because they're in, and tools like what your company's building, where you're creating networks, are more valuable, right? It's all about network effect. Right.
Yeah.
The capabilities your company is building, right, Bamboo Health, is all about organizations and hospitals and doctors all connected together. So because you're not being excluded, it enables a network effect, right? And therefore we can more effectively innovate on them.
Totally. And I don't think I've ever connected the dots between like before we had a bunch of people who were healthy who weren't covered by insurance. Now we do. So there's a larger pool, and therefore we get more innovation on the care coordination side. It's a really interesting question. I think there's just more dollars flowing in insurance sort of, bank accounts to be able to sort of spread across a larger pool of people, and therefore they can invest in the high risk people more because there's just more money to fund, the initiatives for the high risk people. But like, I'll just say like care coordination generally isn't required for most people. Like if you go to the ER, you break your thumb, you get a cast, you go home, it's like, you're fine. You don't need a care coordinator. You don't need somebody sort of dealing with you. You don't need, like, you're fine. But if you're experiencing homelessness, you've got substance use disorder, and you're really struggling to sort of get access to any primary care doctor, well, I mean, there's a real opportunity to support that person to just get them off their feet and get them healthier, or at least like keep them from falling through the cracks. And so when you have a larger reserves to fund some of these innovations, I think that probably, makes sense. But yeah, I mean, these topics on access versus cost versus quality tend to get siloed, but they are definitely interrelated. Like you need all the people and the risk pool to be able to get the dollars to fund the, the quality initiatives, and the quality initiatives, if you improve on those, and they reduce the cost initiatives. So they are related.
Jay, since you live in this healthcare world and you are talking about helping to reduce cost and quality of life, something like 60% of healthcare cost is in the last 6 months of life. Is that true?
It's a large percentage, yeah.
Okay, so I've observed a lot of folks, like in California and Oregon, I think Washington, we have that ability to terminate our own lives if we have terminal cancer, right? And so when you decide to do that, they give you some drugs, you have to get certified that you're of sound mind and body, and you can go. But there's a lot of people that go through dementia, they go through all kinds of issues. I've seen family members who, they're in diapers at the end of their life and they're barely aware of where they are. I don't want to be there, right? I don't want to be in that mode for 2, 3, 5, 10 years. So here's my idea. We create a score for how we expect our quality of life to be. And as soon as we breach it by a certain percentage, we get to terminate ourselves. So at the time when I don't, I'm not aware enough to know I want it, but I want it. What do you think of that?
The principle around that I'm into. It's clear. It's a score. I don't know. This reminds me of that book, Being Mortal, the Atul Gawande book. It's have you read that book?
I haven't read it.
I haven't read it, but I read Complications. So.
But I thought he did a really good job of being like that. You come up with a proxy for the number.
That's right.
I think what you're trying to do is actually manifest that as like a score that you can use to communicate to authorities, and and just say like, this is something that we've all agreed upon, and so it should be allowed. But I like his thing of like, I think he said his dad wants to be able to like watch a game and eat a bowl of vanilla ice cream, and if he can't do that anymore, that's sort of at the end. It's a good proxy for like comprehension of information, being able to use your own hand to like spoon some ice cream in your mouth. So I don't know. I like the principle of what you're saying, but the political discussion around this is the same as the political discussion around abortion. It's the same debate, kind of at a different life stage, and there's people who are going to be firmly and strongly against it. So I think it might be a state level reality that could happen, but I like the principle.
I guess then they won't allow me to do the next part of it, which is the way that I die. I'd like to be put on an airplane. You know how Sandeep, you and I did the skydiving thing? I want to skydive
down
without the parachute. And I get the thrill of falling, and then it's quick.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, man. It's beautiful.
How about we send you up in one of the Elon Musky or Bezos rockets and just send you into the Earth's atmosphere from there, so that you just become ash. Yeah, you just disintegrate. Your ash is spread over the entire world.
And then I'm in every holy river.
That's right.
The Ganga.
That's right.
Ganga, Yamuna,
interplanetary dust.
Nile. I'm in every freaking river.
All right. What is Bamboo Health's like company mission right now? Like maybe you can talk about like what are the challenges you're dealing with now, and where is the company at on its journey?
So I sold Patient Ping in 2021 to Bamboo Health, and Bamboo Health is the parent company of the company that I originally founded.
Right.
And I was just kind of around on the sidelines helping them out for about a year and a half after I sold my company. But about 7 months ago, I stepped in as the CEO of Bamboo Health, and I came in with a pretty specific mission of what I thought this company could become. So we're in the process of moving in that direction. So if you go to our website, it doesn't really tell the story that I'm about to tell right now.
Ooh, an exclusive.
Basically,
Spark of Ages exclusive drop.
Yeah.
Spark of Ages.
No, I mean, I'll tell you, like, I went to a Vipassana meditation back in, it's like January or February. And a big part of Vipassana meditation is around suffering and the root cause of suffering. And suffering is largely anchored in, through this school of thought, it's anchored in craving or aversion. So if you organize like all of your mental chatter into like what it is, it's either craving or aversion applied to the future, or craving or aversion applied to the past, unless you're actually in the present. So meaning I want something that I don't have right now, or I'm trying to avoid something that I'm not currently in right now. So the space between what you have right now and what you're craving or what you're avoiding, that is misery, right? That's sort of suffering. Sort of the root of this. Yeah,
we're getting Buddhist now, baby.
Right. Okay. So I was at this Vipassana meditation thinking, a lot of the conversations around suffering and like the world and, how we have a lot of suffering in this world, which is a big part of the Buddhist teachings. And how do you sort of liberate yourself, or at least like dedicate your life towards the reduction of human suffering? And one of the things that I was thinking about a lot with Bamboo Health and our products is that we deal with people when they're at their extreme moments, like highest moments of suffering. So when somebody goes to the ER, they're in the ER because something has fallen apart in their lives, especially if they're like really in the ER for good reason. Now, if they're like, their kids, like hypochondriac, like kids, like that's different.
Well, even they're suffering in a way, right?
Even they're suffering.
The only reason you go to a place that says emergency on it is because you feel you have an emergency, right?
Well stated. Thanks for the correction. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's like you're there because the stories of human suffering that are experienced in the ER are just so tragic. And, we also have other products that deal with people when they're calling 988 because they're suicidal. 988's an alternative to 911. So if they're calling that, like really their life is hit, they're at these crucible moments in their lives where they're just like, I need help. And our products, that's all we really deal with, is when we will notify you when they're in the emergency room. We'll give the provider some information on their historical utilization of controlled substances when they need a new controlled substance. Like this opioid crisis that we've got, this is a chronic pain crisis. Like we are in pain as a country, and so like people are coming in to get a painkiller. They're suffering. Their lives are filled with suffering, and they're trying to heal it through a pill. And it's just a tiny part of like what's underneath that.
Okay, so you're in Vipassana meditation. You're having this Don Draper kind of season finale. Sorry for the spoiler alert. Moment where you're like, you're sort of understanding the world's suffering. So like, how do you then relate this to Bamboo Health and what you guys are doing?
Yeah. So the story that the guru Goenka was telling about was a woman who had her husband and her 2 kids died in a tragic accident. And this woman in India she lost her mind. She would run on the streets naked, completely lost her mind. And she found Vipassana meditation as a way to respiration, focus on sensation, move through the sort of thoughts that you're having in your head and kind of focus on the sensation that is manifest in your body. And it sort of allowed her to calm down. So she found a tool to reduce her human suffering, right? And in my mind, I thought, wow, we detect people in their extreme moments of suffering. If we can help even a small fraction of them get access to a solution, a remedy that's going to support and heal their suffering in some way, or at least reduce it, what a service that we can bring to the world. So basically what I came in to do is say, and actually I did this when I first started as CEO, I changed our mission to reducing human suffering. That's our mission now at Bamboo Health.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
We detect people during seminal moments in their lives, meaning in the ER, when they're having a suicidal crisis, when they're coming in for a controlled substance prescription. That's what our existing products do. We've got amazing products to do that. And we're building a care navigation hub now. So anytime we detect somebody who's in a moment of suffering, we'll try to find them care. We'll try to find them services. We're focused on people with moderate to severe mental illness or moderate to severe substance use disorder. So people who have opioid use disorder, or they have alcohol use disorder, or fentanyl is a big issue now. I've heard about this new thing called crank, which is like a weird concoction, sort of a concoction of a number of different highly addictive substances that's causing people to die. It's sort of the new crisis that's coming out there. So it's on substance use disorder, and then on serious mental illness, that's anybody with a major mood disorder, major anxiety, or depression, bipolar, schizophrenia. Those are the main conditions that we're focused on. They show up in the ER. We're going to find them, we're going to assess them, and then we're going to get them into care. And so that may mean substance use recovery. That may mean a care manager at a value-based care organization. It may be in a virtual substance use recovery program. There's a number of providers that are coming up. It might be crisis stabilization.
Or just send him to our dad. Just send him to Sudhir Parikh, who's a meditation and yoga teacher. I mean,
he's got the best breathing exercises.
Really?
Best pranic healing.
I mean, there's all kinds of remedies out there. It could be psychedelic assisted therapy. It could be Vipassana meditation. It could be
Sudhir.
Nataraj Yoga Center, baby.
Yeah, just look for him on YouTube, produced by my company's videos. But I think it's an amazing thing. This comes a little bit out of the root of the company, right? Which is you had this APRIS.
APRIS, yeah.
APRIS, right?
APRIS, yeah.
You had APRIS, and that was in the behavioral health area for, I think, data records, right? In that area. And then you have the alerting capabilities, and the alerting capabilities coming out of what your company brought to it when it came together. And now you can use it to signal those situations and help people connect the dots.
Yeah, absolutely. APRIS is an incredible company. Their foundation is I'm going to butcher the story, but the founder of APRIS is an incredible guy, and he's done an amazing job with this story, but the business he built. But he was a young guy in Louisville, Kentucky, and was driving home one day and he heard on the radio about a woman who was a victim of domestic abuse. Her ex went to jail and then was released from jail, but she was never notified of his release from jail. He waited a week until her, I think it was her 18th birthday, was inside her kitchen while she was coming home, and then he stabbed her to death. And he was like, how did she not know that this person who she was a victim of was released from jail? How did she not know that? And so he built a system now where if you're a victim and somebody was incarcerated, that you would be notified of that person potentially being, back in the community and potentially posing a risk. So he built that, and he's built that across multiple states. That has sort of grown from just the victim identification notification system to like the Breaking Bad days, where meth was sort of pretty rampant. You could detect that somebody was probably endeavoring to cook a lot of meth if they bought a large volume of Sudafed from a pharmacy over the counter. So they built a system to detect when large volumes of Sudafed were being sold to one person, so that authorities could try to sort of figure out what was going on. That then translated into the controlled substance resource library. So if somebody's buying opioids or if somebody's buying, a controlled substance, we want the doctors to be able to look up the history of controlled substance utilization. A really cool company detecting people. Also, I think during moments of suffering, that they're able to, sort of alert and alarm, the appropriate people.
So you guys started working together. What was it like to have the team that you were building and mesh it with another team?
It was a transition for sure. I think that our team, kind of came into this larger organization, and it's amazing. I think anytime a transaction happens, the team gets just inundated by recruiters because everybody's like, okay, this is the moment, that they're going to be willing to sort of wedge out. Right. I think that for the people who are kind of like director level, senior manager level, VP level, where in the smaller company, they were at the top of their game, they were about to get promoted and be, potentially be the number one. Now they were kind of a couple layers deeper in the organization, but they were incredibly gifted, incredibly talented at what they were doing. Those people were immediately poached, and they were like, okay, now's my time to go do this at a smaller company. And
did you plan for that from the get-go?
This is the first time that I'd been through it. So honestly, I didn't fully know what to expect, but I don't know if the acquirer planned for it fully. Yeah. I don't know if they really invested early in retaining that employee base. They were a little slow to the punch.
So it sounds like you lost folks, but in that transaction, you were also coming together with them. Were you?
Yeah.
So did you take over that, or was it?
No. I was just sort of like on the sidelines. I was there helping for sure with the transition.
So this was your exit.
That was my exit.
You built it up. You got your exit. They kept you as an advisor because they knew you had invaluable experience, and then you got to hopefully enjoy the fruits of it,
which was a ton of fun. Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
And then you stayed as an advisor, but then they really loved you, so they wanted you back because you have this. You have a new way to take them.
Yeah. I think what they saw happening to the business wasn't something that they were excited about, and there were some performance issues. And I think they asked if I would be willing to sort of take over. And I had a very specific idea of what could happen. And I said, if we're on board with exploring this and seeing if it's viable, then I'd be excited to try it out. And I'm doing it on an interim basis. So it's been about 7 months, and I've really enjoyed it. And I've sort of pointed the company in this direction of reducing suffering. And yeah, it feels really like mission led now, and which I think we lost a little bit our purpose as one that we were very focused on just like the business and trying to make the business successful, and we kind of lost our reason for existence.
That happens a lot, right? When you're in the business, you put things together, you're trying to you have to make an outcome for the private equity firm or whatever firm that owns the company.
Yeah.
And so in that, you get so caught up with hitting the business metrics, you forget about the mission and what really drives people there. So it looks like they realized that, and they're re-injecting it with having you there, which is really cool. So now you did raise a lot of capital in doing this. Did you always feel like you could raise over $100 million to go build a company? Or was that like, you went to Wharton, that's just normal, everybody does that?
Definitely not. No, but it's amazing how these things end up being really incremental. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's the way that I'm wired. And I did notice it relative to like there's sort of two different ends of the spectrum. One is like you feel when you're kind of building a company and raising money. One is like the insecure child of immigrant experience of like, I have to prove everything and show everything and get the data to demonstrate that we're making progress, traction, and only then should I earn the right to do more. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I think if you can just like sell an incredible vision simply on the confidence of your vision, without a lot of substance or meat underneath it, and get people to believe in that vision, you can raise large sums of money and, do it. And like, I didn't have that. I didn't have that confidence. I didn't have that. I think I gained the confidence as I would see things work. To be an entrepreneur, you can't be fully, otherwise you just sort of exist in your own paranoia and you don't actually take any risks.
You have to convince people to do it, right? And so one of the things you did is you may not have believed it from the get-go, but you believed enough of yourself that you could talk to other people about it. So you probably did you surround yourself with just amazing folks, or did you kind of use the network to get to those folks and create your case?
You kind of gradually, I talk about the chicken and egg in startups, the constant chicken and egg in startups.
Oh, it's a huge issue. Yeah.
Yeah. There's always like, how am I going to raise my first, round of capital until I get traction? And then, and how am I going to get traction until I have some money? How am I going to make my first big hire until I get a real organization that they want to join? Well, how am I going to get a real organization to get my first big hire? Like there's a constant stream of like, you have to create that future a little bit to get people to take a leap of faith on you before it's actually built. And for me, I would always do that very incrementally. I'd kind of like inchworm my way, towards the next big milestone. It's exhausting because you always think in your head, like, once I do this, then but then there's always the next,
there's always something next, right?
Yeah. It's like the Rockefeller thing. How much money is enough money? $1 more. That's right.
And I think it's a good management, in a way, it's a great management technique, right? You always want people to believe as an entrepreneur or as an executive that you have something else for them.
Right.
That after we get to this next point, you're going to move them to the next one, right? And there's a next one, the next one. If at the point they feel like you're just sitting statically in one place and you're happy with being very operational, they lose interest. Right? It's a human behavior. We always want to see what's next.
We said this thing in our company where we were dealing with some cost issues, and we told our team that like these products are in maintenance mode. I can't tell you how much that sapped the spirit of these teams. They're like, I don't want to work on a product that's in maintenance mode. Like what? Like I want to be building. So everybody has this carnal
Makes
urge.
you sound like a janitor at that point.
Oh man,
Or
the death of any I'm on the shitty maintenance product. I'm so excited.
We want to keep the lights.
Hey, honey, I'm home. I'm working on the maintenance product.
Yeah, working on the maintenance product. Right?
I mean, I think maybe it's just a branding thing. I think it's if you said this product's in coast mode, like I kind of want to coast.
I like coasting.
Coast mode.
Or you're a surfer, surfing the wave. Just like
people want to feel challenged, right? They want to live that challenge. So now you've done multiple things, right? You've worked in the nonprofit, government-oriented space. You've built and started your own company. You in all these different
investment banker.
Probably you're investing, right? I mean, isn't that sort of the next part of your essay that you wrote when you were going to Wharton? I'm going to be a successful entrepreneur, and then I'm going to be a great investor. No, I'm just joking. That's what I wrote. But it sounds like you are investing in new things.
Yeah. No, it's fun to be part of early stage companies and passing on the lessons that I learned and being part of their journey. It's like a way to live, kind of live vicariously through other companies. It's like I think about people who get into Michigan now, and it's like I would have never gotten in. I think about the people who got in. It's like that, it's like you see the new companies that are coming out, the founders that are building them, and I'm just like, wow.
I had this great conversation just yesterday with with a super successful business person, entrepreneur. Right? He's like, you know what? I'm a little older now. He's in his 40s, and he's saying, but the things that make us successful made me successful. There's some new things that these folks are seeing that we're seeing differently. A lot of these young new founders. Is that? Are you seeing a difference between these new founders? They have access to these technologies that they can literally build themselves with, like generative AI, with cloud. They're things they can connect to people all over the world and put together teams. Are you seeing something that's different in them that you saw way back?
I think there's like a superhero level of invincibility around challenge with like real, thoughtful, logical plans on how they're going to jump over these barriers that otherwise, a decade or two ago would have thought that either they're insurmountable or they're just multi-year journeys. Now they've shrunk to month-long journeys. And just I don't know if it's all Adderall fueled or what, but like, you'd be like,
that's the difference.
Just the complete invincibility of like, I'm just, we're just going to do it. Like, well, how are you going to do it? Well, this is how we're going to do it. And you're like, okay, yeah, do it. And I see them do it.
You feel like you buy into that?
I mean, I've seen it happen now. Like I've said no to things. I'm like, this guy's smoke, like there's no way. And then I miss out on an opportunity because they just sort of ram past whatever I think are the reasons that are not gonna make a thing successful.
Is it because, do you think maybe it's more availability of capital, or are there so many more VCs? Like you talked about, there was a story in your life where VCs were chasing you, right? Are more VCs there to chase these men and women?
I had a thought, which was like, I wonder if, because this younger generation, like when I think about Arjun, your oldest, he grew up in a very different world than I grew up in, right? He 9/11, the crash, pandemic, like these are huge markers in his life. It basically contains his entire life, right? And climate crisis is just this constant barrage of existential problems. Whereas I think when I grew up in that generation right before him, it was a little bit more, and both of us, or all of us here really, there was a lot more kind of hope, and we were in this peacetime vibe.
Post Berlin Wall falling, America.
You felt like things were moving. Yeah, just all these civil rights movements. The gay lesbian movement.
Everything was on its way up. Yeah,
everything's hope and change, right? Very Obama, and sort of culminated with Obama. Whereas the narrative for them is crises all around. So I wonder if just being hit with all, it's like do or die. It feels like do or die for them. And it's like, okay, fine. If you're gonna lay all these giant challenges on us, then screw it. We have to do it ourselves and figure it out. And have the confidence to figure it out. Otherwise, we're doomed, right? And I don't know, maybe that's sort of forging their blade, so to speak. I wonder.
Yeah, adversity breeds sort of opportunity or something like that. Adversity breeds sort of the conditions for confidence.
Well, they have tools now that we didn't have. They have social media to amplify what they say. They can band together with other folks and really push those things together. I'll give you my youngest son. He's coming up. With AI, he's seeing what his girlfriend's dealing with. She's a type 1 diabetic, and he I don't want to see her suffer the way she does with these current tools. They don't do a good job managing her insulin. So he's decided to create an algorithm to run on top of the algorithm that runs the insulin pump. Yeah. And he's actually running me through the analysis that he's doing. And he's like, I take the Apple Watch output and I pump it through this algorithm, and he's just building it. And I don't know if he'll succeed or not, but he thinks he can.
There's such value in that naivety, right? I was just talking to some young upstarts here in LA, about that very thing. I'm like, I don't know how to impart that wisdom of what you don't know right now about how this world works is such an asset. Because you don't come in with all of these, self-defeating kind of experiences of if I try that, it's going to fail. So I might as well not try that anyway. It's that is such an asset. Just go, use it, use your naivety as best you can. It's a huge, valuable thing. Well, I guess on that, what's next for you? What would you do if money was no object? What would you do for a job? You've done pretty well for yourself, so maybe you're in that space too. Would you just do lots of vipassana? Is that what you do?
Run vipassana? Is that your form of darkness retreat? Is that I'm just joking. It sounds like you have a greater mission.
Yeah, no, I think there's certain interest areas that I want to just broaden the way that I drive impact, and the space of homelessness, social isolation, substance use disorder is one big interest area of mine, and Bamboo is kind of one platform to drive impact towards that problem area. And there's others, and I think that Julia, my wife, is, I don't know, I'll give you the analog. She's about 3.5 months, 4 months pregnant.
Woohoo!
Congratulations.
Congrats, man.
First one,
yeah. So wow. I mean, we're later, kind of later to the party, but I give this fable of the chicken and the pig when I'm giving career advice to young people. So have you ever heard of the fable of the chicken and the pig?
I don't know. Yeah, no. Remind us. I know the podcast listeners probably haven't, so that's all that matters.
Podcast listeners, yeah. So chicken asks the pig, do you want to start a restaurant? And the pig says, sure, what do you want to call it? And the chicken says, well, how about ham and eggs? And the pig says, no thanks. Because if we do that, I'm committed and you're just involved. And so the moral of the story is taking a job, take the pig job, put your butt on the line, own a number, be responsible for results, be accountable for a number, meaning if you succeed, then you can see the impact of your work. And if you fail, then you can see the number come down, as opposed to the chicken role, which is just laying eggs and opining and, kind of on the sidelines, and then, sort of hope that other people succeed to do the job. And so I think founder CEO type roles is kind of the ultimate pig job. And, I think I'm in a phase right now where the chicken job is probably a little bit more appealing, where, I want to,
Right.
just sort of help and advise and, support other companies. But there's a few things that I feel pretty motivated about that I may get more involved in. So I don't know exactly, but I do know that when
Coast mode? Are you in coast mode?
when I was in coast mode, and not working that much before base shipping, I definitely got bored. So I don't want to go back to that. But I think the job that I'm in right now is pretty intense, and so I think it's probably something in between. I haven't quite figured it out, and so I need to figure out a way to actually create some balance and harmony.
Makes a lot of sense. So just bring it full circle. So you attended, according to our producer who wrote this little question here, you attended the greatest university on earth, the University of Michigan. He's also a Wolverine, I think. Please tell any of the Wolverines that might be listening, what's your favorite food spot on campus? And I will not say go blue in the same, in all caps as he wrote it on the script. I won't do it.
But I will. And I would say the first restaurant that came to mind was Pancho Villa. I'm not even sure if it's there anymore, but it's like the dirty, late night burrito spot that we would go to. That or In-N-Out for a slice.
In-N-Out for a slice? Wait, what? There's an In-N-Out pizza place?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it was called In-N-Out. It was a pizza place. Sorry, not In-N-Out, the one here. It was In-N-Out, like a convenience store that had really good pizza by the slice.
Crazy. That's confusing, but okay. Got it.
Okay, here's another quick one. You went to two great schools, Michigan and Penn, Wharton. Which one do you love more?
Oof.
I mean, definitely Michigan.
Whoa!
I love that.
It's your first love, like, right? Like,
It is your first love.
Exactly. It's really hard to replace a good experience in college with anything else.
A grad
which
school.
I luckily had. Yeah.
B school, you were going to black tie events.
You say that like it's a good thing.
Having all kinds of fun.
All right. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
Appreciate
that
that.
was fun. Yeah.
Oh man, what an interview.
Jay is an amazing person. What I like about it is how open he was about the problems in the industry and how we can go ahead and save it, right? Or how we can address it, and how he just devoted his life to it. He found it while growing up, and he found it while he was working in a regular job, and then he carried it forward all the way from business school. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I think my like big takeaway was like, it's not just one spark that might happen in your life. It's almost like continuing to investigate and search for your spark leads you to other sort of epiphanies and realizations, and it helps you reframe how you're fundamentally going about your business or running your business. And, having that be a practice or be a part of your life, I think is a invaluable exercise. Like that was
incredible.
You got to keep looking for your spark sometimes, or keep analyzing.
He kept going as he went. He, like you said, he just didn't start with, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. He was encouraged heavily to be a doctor. His father was already running his own company as a pharmacist. And then he just kept seeing things and kept wanting to make a difference to people's lives, and said, well, I can do that with the excitement, with myself as a business person, combining that with a person in healthcare. It's just really remarkable how he took it step by step and was humble the whole way and kept learning the whole way. Mm-hmm. And now has been asked to come back and re-engage in it. I'm still kind of floored that when he talks about some of the healthcare companies, most CEOs would not poke at healthcare systems when they're likely his customers.
Right.
And it shows remarkable courage.
There's a bravery in that, for sure.
I just had a blast. I think it was incredible. And I just want to wrap it up by saying, thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed this pod, please take a moment to rate us and comment. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere podcasts can be found.
That's right. The show is produced by myself and Anand Shah. We got production assistance by Taryn Talley, edited by Sean Mayer.
I'm your host, Rajiv Parikh from Position Squared, the leading growth marketing company based in Silicon Valley. Come visit us at position2.com.
This has been an F and Funny production.
We'll catch you next time. And remember, folks, be ever curious.